Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started with the H-2B visa, J-1 visa updates. So we're going to start off with Keith. We're going to start with Keith Babian of Babian Law. He's just kind of run us through what the H-2B program is and what it's good for. Many of you are probably already familiar, but just in case to refresh all of our memories, we're going to start there. Take it away.
All right, thanks. So I'm Keith Pabian. My firm is Pabian Law. We do H-2Bs for tons of hospitality organizations, whether that's lodging, ski, private clubs, some restaurant groups. Based down in Massachusetts, I also co-own Seasonal Connect with Carly, who's in the back, which is a software platform that allows you to find organizations and workers and collaborate. What I've been tasked to do is just set the scene on the H-2B and J-1 front, and then we'll ask some questions. So, all right, so how many of you currently use J-1s at your properties? Okay, and how many of you use H-2Bs? Okay, so a lot of you could be saying what I'm saying. So H-2Bs go through, you need someone to help you with H-2Bs, is probably the best way to say it. Ideally, it's a law firm, because it's a legal process. J-1s they go through these agencies that are accredited by the State Department, like a CIE type organization. What the H-2B is it's a visa where Congress created it based on for organizations that can show seasonality. So you need to be able to show that you're seasonal for up to 10 months of the year. I would be surprised if there's not many Maine organizations that aren't able to show that. You can still be open year-round. The government wants to see a bell curve, right? They want to see that your expenses, revenue, and staffing go up during part of the year, and they go down. You can get it for up to 10 months, and you can also split that 10 months up however you want. You should apply for your season, though. So if your busy season runs from May through October, that's going to be when you apply for H-2Bs. It's one of the only practical visas that applies to hospitality. And as I'm looking at this program, I'll talk through some of the issues. I see it, along with the J-1, as the fundamental backbone of how you can do staffing. It's available to you. It was really, you're one of the industries that it was created for. When you go through the application, you have to apply based on the job. So it's all about what job categories you're struggling with, whether it's housekeepers, cooks, dishwashers, whatever it might be. You get to set the requirements, which is rare for immigration. And then at the end of the process, either the workers can transfer to you from another property inside the country, so they might be coming from winter to come here if you're a summer property, or maybe they can come from outside the country, and I'll go through that. There's a lot of requirements with H-2Bs, okay? There's a lot of legal requirements. There's a lot of compliance. I think we're going to talk about some of the proposed rules that are coming out that are very compliance heavy. But basically, you got to follow the rules. And a lot of the rules you're actually almost setting for yourself when you draft these job descriptions, which tells you what you're going to do. Follow the rules. A lot of you are already doing a lot of what's required, whether that's wage, location, all of that, just based on almost all of you probably had to raise rates after the pandemic. You don't need to provide housing. If you don't, the workers are going to want to know where they're going to live and how they're going to get to work. And it's a tough recruiting market right now. That's one of the biggest issues with H-2Bs. All right, why would you consider this? You get a high level of workers. So if I were running a property, I would consider both J-1s and H-2Bs. They're not mutually exclusive. Carly and I talk all the time. You don't want to put all of your eggs in one basket anymore with staffing. And so, but what's nice about the H-2Bs, they're higher level. These are professional workers. Potentially they can return season after season. They want to work in hospitality. That's a big thing at this point. You can file to include your shoulder seasons. The J-1 usually is a lot shorter in duration. It's going to really be more the summer or winter months. This also gets you those shoulder seasons where the college kids are gone, the J-1 kids are gone, and so on. Usually less expensive than contract labor. If you're using contract labor at this point, that's so wildly expensive. And it can help to reduce overtime. But, oh no, before I do the but, to differentiate between J-1s and H-2Bs, because they're different visas, the J-1 was designed as a postgraduate intern visa, right? Most of the time, this is their first time working in hospitality on the J-1 front. And so really, the J-1s are your entry-level workers. They're shorter in duration, they're shorter in time, they're here for the experience. Conversely, on the H-2B front, it's a longer season, they're more experienced, it's easier for them to come back for future seasons. There's ability to grow into supervisory or managerial roles. And also you can transfer them from other properties in the country where they might have the same payroll systems. They might have some experience, maybe even with some of your guests, right? That they might almost follow the guests to you. That being said, it's not the right visa for everybody on the H-2B front, okay? The demand is outrageous for H-2Bs. It's never been higher. There's this numerical cap that I'll show you about in a second. The demand is also causing government delays. It's also causing recruitment hurdles because there's more demand than ever before. Employee housing, we could spend a whole day talking about that at this point and how cost of housing has skyrocketed, and the employee housing is really moving further and further away from the work site as a result. Also, it's a workflow, right? There's work that goes into doing the H-2B petition for you as the property level. There's also cost. But from a work standpoint, if you're already getting crushed and you don't have any help, it can be hard to do. And we see this a lot with some of the smaller restaurants. It might not be the best fit for a smaller restaurant, whereas like in the lodging side, you might have the HR department, you might have some recruiters that could help. It's also a legal process with legal obligations and legal consequences. And so if you don't have the ability to also train your supervisors and managers who are kind of at the front line of dealing with the H-2Bs, that's a very big liability for you as a property. All right. Now, let's talk about this cap, because as we're talking about this is going to kind of be one of the central things I think we're going to talk about with H-2Bs. H-2Bs were created right around 1990. When they did it, they created this 66,000 cap that got split between, it's all about your start date. So if your start date falls October through March, 33,000 are available for that. If it falls April through September, the other 33,000 are available during that time frame. All right. The problem is there's a massive disparity. Most organizations nationally across all industries that utilize H-2Bs fall in the summer. But this cap, it's not based on economic factors. It's not based on unemployment numbers. It's a set limit. But importantly, it only applies to out-of-country workers, those people coming to the U.S. to work. So if one of the big secrets here is if you do H-2B in country, right? If you're getting them from Florida, Arizona, or ski country for summer, or if you're a winter organization, if you're getting them from everywhere else, including within the state of Maine, they don't count against this ridiculous cap. Just to show you how bad it is, this is just for April 1st filings, okay? This year, the government got about 143,000 worker applications for 33,000 spots, just for day one, just for April 1st. That doesn't include any post-April 1st filings. That math does not work, right? There's way too much. And for winter season, it's catching up. It's nowhere near it. But this year, for the first time, they did a lottery for winter filings, and the cap got hit right around like October 16th start dates, which massively messed up ski mountains, right? Which Maine has some, right? Their start dates are after October 16th. So this cap is a big issue. And I would implore you, if you go down this road, don't rely on out-of-country workers. You're setting yourself up for so much disaster in that way. The government's tried to come in and help fix things. When I say the government, Congress, right? The federal government. The problem is that we have a few problems, and we can talk about this, right? Last year, today, I don't even know what the date today is, but whatever date today is the date is later than the date that they announced cap relief last year. So last year they would have already announced cap relief. The reason why is the cap relief is always tied into the spending bill, and that spending bill right now is stalled, and it seems like we're in massive disarray. There's no House Speaker. They extended it through November 15th. There's a lot of problems this year, and I will tell you, I'm very nervous for our clients this year, where we don't know what's going to happen with cap relief going forward. We need them to do cap relief. A lot of you might have heard about like the Guatemalans, El Salvadorians, the Honduran nationals coming in. All of that is tied into cap relief. And it's also, there's already delays built into that versus the in-country way. But the problem right now is everything is stalled right now because the government is stalled, right? Again, the solution, if you do the in-country workers, if your summer season, they're coming up from South Florida, they don't count against this cap. The government, a potential government shutdown would hurt you because it would stall some of the petitions, but you wouldn't get wrapped into cap relief. All right. This is what it would look like as an example. Let's say one summer organization has a May 1st through November 1st season. The other has November 1st through May 1st. Workers are moving back and forth. Okay. All right. In terms of when to start from a process standpoint, when to start, we start summer season petitions at our office mid-September. which is wild, right? Put that into context for a second. If you're interested in H-2Bs, we start about 6.5 months before your start date. That's how long the process takes. So there's a long lead time. It's all about planning. We start summer season mid-September, winter season mid-March. All right. Last thing on Seasonal Connect, I think we'll talk more about this, but Carly and I really created this so that the organizations could find one another. So it's a platform that's designed to get the employers to meet one another. So we're around if you want to talk about it. You can also find seasonal workers in there. It's a pretty cool thing. But, and here's my contact. I'm happy to answer any questions as we go. I want to make sure we talk about some of the more interesting stuff, but that hopefully provides some sort of foundation as we're getting going on this.
So hopefully we're all on the same page now about what H-2Bs are. So sweet. And I'm sorry I put those too close together.
No, that's okay.
So now we're gonna ask some questions, get a little bit more detailed, and then we'll open it up to you guys for questions. Brian, you've used this program, and you have also used the J1 program. Could you just explain, for those who may not know, a little bit about what the J1 program is?
My name is Brian Langley. I own and operate the Union River Lobster Pot in downtown Ellsworth. And like everyone else in the room, you found yourself up against quite the crunch for hiring. And I've been in business almost 40 years and found for most of those years you could find enough help coming in and applying for summer work. I'm seasonal, open from mid-June to mid-October. I first got introduced to the H-2B visa program as some of these folks often like to pick up a second job. So I had people knocking at the door, and they had primary sponsors in the local hotels, and they were looking to pick up some nighttime work. And so I picked up 3 Jamaicans that were living just up the street, and they wanted some extra hours. So I learned about the H-2B visa program. Learned the company, much like Keith's, was a company that specialized in that, investigated that, and so the next year I dabbled and jumped in, really much to my dismay, actually. The incredible amount of paperwork, the lead time, and I'm seasonal. I open up in June, so if you try to meet that deadline, I'm in Ellsworth, so outside of Bar Harbor, almost all of those folks are landing, expecting to have to land those people in April. And even if they open up after April, they are on site and paying them 35 hours a week starting in April in order to have their crew. So that does affect like when they open up. So when I got my very first fill out all the paperwork, how many people you're going to need. You have to put ads in the newspaper. Those of you that have done it, you understand, but the company kind of handle all of that. And because of delays and the caps and opening them up, my H-2B visa person arrived on August 26th. I closed October, was pretty much not of any real use to me. And then later, I ended up having an audit and then having to go through an explanation process of why I didn't get more H-2B visas that I had applied for. How come I didn't? You said you had a need for like 4 or 5, and how come you didn't get them? It was a royal pain. I will never do it again. It doesn't fit. As Keith was saying, for a small business, I say small, I have 42 employees, but a small restaurant that my season is shorter than some others, it just didn't fit. Moved to the J1 visa program. I got introduced that again as a second. There was a motel up the street that used the J1 visa program for housekeeping. A young man shows up at the door looking for a nighttime job from Romania. He's on the J1 visa. Comes to work for me as the second job, and he wants to come back. He's in college, wants to come back a second year, which was 2 years ago, and hired him. And then got introduced to CIEE out of Portland through them, and found that was a much better fit for me. The paperwork is far less, very easy to do, so started out, had him come back a second year, and then where he was just sort of on the front end of college. He found a way to sort of delay his graduation so that he could continue to come back to work. And then he actually recruited for me in Romania and found me a fabulous set of his friends that really wanted to come and work. So I had 3 this summer, and they were sort of the engine in the back of the house for me. And they really have been fabulous. They come with a willingness to work and want to work, and explained to me sort of that each week working for me was about 1 month's pay in Romania. So it was their drive to work sort of far exceeded some of my other people. And they became like family. And so the experience was very good. And a couple of them want to come back again next year as well. Some have aged out of the program, graduated college and such. So, and I found the caseworker, or the person assigned to me, actually was, I live in Ellsworth. She grew up in Blue Hill. Somebody, you're not talking to somebody from, the other part of the universe. You're calling somebody in Portland, and as it turns out, she grew up in the next town over from me in Ellsworth. So I found that whole process much easier to work with. June 1st, roughly, they kind of land, or June 1st to June 15th, and then September 30th when they're done. So as Keith was saying, they didn't get me quite all the way to the end of the season, but they got me past, certainly past Labor Day, which is where you traditionally lose college kids. Usually you lose them in the middle to end of August. So I got past the major part of the season, but to the end. So housing, I found myself some years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, I actually built some housing. Never wanted to be a landlord or have to own housing, but that's the nature of it now. So I can house up to 4 or 5 employees myself now. So, but that allows me to run 7 days a week, as not everybody on Main Street in Ellsworth does. In fact, I would say no one does. There may be only one other restaurant or so that I know of that runs 7 days a week, and so make hay when the sun shines. So I don't know where else you'd like me to go with that. I know you have more questions. So.
Yeah, no, thank you. That was a very good overview. I appreciate that. Halsey, maybe could you introduce yourself to the room?
Sure. Yeah, so I'm Halsey Frank. My first name is Halsey. My last name is Frank. People think it should be the other way around, but it isn't. I am state office representative and legal counsel to Senator Susan Collins. And that means I run her Portland office, which does primarily constituent casework, so helping constituents in our area of responsibility who may have problems with federal agencies. There's none of that. So, and then I'm legal counsel on a couple of issues that I have some experience and expertise in. That's mostly criminal law. It's not immigration law generally or visas, although we do, as part of our casework in Portland, help constituents with immigration type issues. So residents who want to travel abroad and need a passport or a visa, residents who are trying to bring somebody into the country, usually family members. That's some of the kind of constituent casework we do. But most of the way the senator organizes her office, most of the substantive subject matter expertise is in Washington, D.C., and in the field offices we're mostly generalists. So I run one of her 6 in-state sort of field offices. Yeah, that said, I'm certainly aware of this issue for a variety of reasons, both personally and professionally. I mean, I'm sure it's not news to you, but you're not alone in terms of industries that are facing labor shortages. I think pretty much everyone is. The senator is certainly aware of that and trying to do what she can to help, at least where the federal government is concerned. In terms of the programs that are the focus of this panel discussion, I mean, my understanding is the H-2B visa requires approval of both the Department of State and the Department of Labor, right?
Department of Labor and then U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, and the state's only involved if they're abroad.
All right, but
Yep.
mostly what we're talking about here, well, you talked about moving people who are already here in the United States and then bringing people in from outside the country. If you're bringing them in from outside the country, you're going to need the State Department, which is what I think explains the more involved and lengthy process that is, involved in getting an H-2B visa. And yeah, your experience, I've heard that story before. By the time we get through the process, our season is over. And is why I think the J-1 is more attractive because it only requires the approval of the Department of State to bring in, and you may know, probably do know better than I, but in that case you're bringing in from outside the country a foreign student for temporary work, and from the State Department's perspective, that's to improve relations and understanding and give them an opportunity to practice their English, that kind of thing. But I think that may be more attractive option. In terms of things the senator is doing in particular, I mean, as regards the H-2B program, I mean, she has been pressing the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security to, reduce the processing delays. And to make full use of the supplemental allocation of visas. I think you alluded to that, Keith, right? I mean, there's this initial allocation each year, but I think Congress has authorized an additional 66 or 65,000.
That's what they did last year. Yeah.
So she's pressed for them to release those, to make use of those more readily. Yeah, and that, as you said, I mean, that tends to get tied up in the whole legislative process and appropriations process, and I'm afraid the news I have on that front, well, I don't know, do we have a speaker? I know that I know that there's a
new guy.
They're trying, it's the fourth try, Mr. Johnson from Louisiana. Yeah. Did he not make it? Do we know?
Oh, you got
he
it.
did. Oh. We have a speaker. Oh my God.
Yay! I hadn't seen the news today. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Well, I knew it was in the works. Okay, so perhaps the logjam, I'll be cautiously optimistic. Look, the senator has been working behind the scenes. I mean, I think, as you may know, she's a hard worker. She's trying to do things according to what she calls regular order, which in the context of the appropriations process means, taking one bill at a time and, debating it in the Senate and having people be able to offer amendments. She's been doing that behind the scenes in preparation for the day when this logjam might break. So, I think I can reveal that is underway even as we speak. But for example, the supplemental, and she has, as I understand it, in one of these appropriations bills that funds the Department of Homeland Security, provisioned, authorized the use of these supplemental visas. So again, cautiously optimistic that that's moving forward. I think, another thing to let you know is that she has introduced a bill to reduce the wait time for work authorization for asylum seekers. And I think we're all here in Maine aware that we have a number of those waiting in the wings, and they tend to be people of some skill and ability who want to work. And in speaking to restaurant owners and operators in Portland, I know they've been frustrated knowing that that possibility is out there but unavailable to them. So it's another example of something that the senator is working on to try and bring some relief to the labor shortage. And the last thing I'll mention, and we were talking about it before, it wasn't a program that I particularly was knowledgeable of, although that's just a reflection of my lack of experience in this area. We were talking earlier about this optional practical training program for F1 foreign students who are in United States schools. And we have a fair number of those here in Maine. I mean, we have a fair number of schools, and we have, in fact, one such student is interning in our office in Portland. I think that's also maybe somewhat a possibility, although I hesitate to go into it in any depth because I'm really not confident I understand it properly. But the basic concept of that, as opposed to a J1, which is a foreign student in a foreign school who wants to come into the United States to work temporarily, and the process for which I think is less onerous than the H-2B. This is a foreign student who is already here in the United States in a United States school. And I think this F1 program offers them the opportunity to work on a temporary basis, and might be a possibility, and might be an easier possibility in terms of recruitment. Although it sounds, for example, you've established a nice connection with Romania. Yeah, so, but you might not have to go to Romania. You might be able to find some Romanians in Maine schools who are, looking to pick up some, and again, I'm not sure. I thought that was both an opportunity to work part-time during the school year and otherwise outside the school year. So I'll stop there.
Okay. Well, that brings up an interesting question, because we do talk almost exclusively about J1s and H-2B visas, but we also know that there are a whole lot of visas out there. And so I guess, Keith, are there other visas besides these two that an employer could consider?
There are. So, it's misleading though. So the U.S. immigration system's weird. There's no such thing as a work permit like there is in Canada. It's more, there's different letter types that correspond with different numbers, and each one has different allowances and different prohibitions. The problem for hospitality is that most of the U.S. immigration system is premised on the visa front for academia and other professional type jobs. So most of the visas that allow for work require a showing that the job requires at least a bachelor's degree. And it gives the government a lot of discretion here. And in my career, I've seen that target narrow pretty regularly to what the government sees as a bachelor's degree job. So what I have found is if it's a managerial job, maybe there's some other opportunities. Right now, I see it as J1, H-2B. If you have rooms, if you're a lodging property, TNs have gotten really popular. That's for Canadians and Mexicans. And some of the agencies that also do J1s are starting to also recruit for TNs, which is really smart. Just be careful. Again, that's a legal process, legal obligations. I wouldn't trust the agencies to do the paperwork, but they're great at finding some candidates. Outside of that, a lot of where we've seen is green card sponsorship, permanent residency. There's an avenue for green cards. You might get emails about this. There's an EB3 process. And it drives me crazy because there are some agents out there, the non-lawyers, that are making it sound really like this amazing opportunity. Like, hey, apply for this EB3 visa. It's not a visa, it's a green card, it's permanent residency. And once the person gets that, they can work for any US employer. Also, it triggers tax obligations for the foreign national forever. And it takes a long time. So it's an opportunity to kind of provide advancement and provide some managerial opportunities for coverage for you. But to me, it all goes back to the J1s and the H-2Bs. Again, the J1s, great opportunity if you need that shorter season. If you came to me today, I would definitely not suggest the H-2B because of how short your season is. H-2B is a great opportunity if you have that longer season. Outside of that, there are a lot of visas, but it's hard. Hospitality is a hard industry in the immigration system.
That makes sense. I've had a lot of people call me because they have questions, and they'll say like, oh well, I'm trying to bring over my cousin who lives in blah, like as though that gives them a leg up in some way. Is that help you in any way? Or?
No. So it's the same way. Like just because someone has a U.S. citizen child doesn't open up any doors for them. That kid actually has to be 21 before they can sponsor a parent. No, having a U.S. relative that's wonderful for them. It might be a reason to come visit the States, but it's not a pathway to any sort of opportunity here for work.
Glad to have that out there, because that's what I say. Let's see. Now, you mentioned in your slide that there were some government attempts to fix the problem. I think that right now, DHS has proposed new rules to modernize H-2 temporary visa program and strengthen worker protections, is the title. And I think they're in the comment period right now. Could you tell us a little bit about these proposed rule changes and what they might mean for employers next year?
Yeah, so this is the way I look at it. So everyone that raised their hand that do H-2Bs, this should scare the crap out of you because on the one side, there's a lot of positives to these rules. And I think I truly think that they're going to take effect because they make sense. I don't think they overstep on state rights. Like all this stuff where I think this would survive a sort of challenge. But right now they're proposed. They're not in effect today. But there's a lot in there that fix a lot of the issues that are caused by a lot of the H-2B government delays. Like it extends grace periods. It allows workers to start work. It allows in-country workers to start working upon receipt, right? So rather than waiting for government approval and for the out-of-country going through the embassy process, they can actually start working when you have proof of filing with immigration. So there's some really big positives there. On the other side, the government pays attention when they go in and do audits. And they see where you guys are doing things that you shouldn't be doing, sometimes innocently, or sometimes maybe you know you're doing something wrong, but you feel like you're justified because you're slammed, you've worked 60 straight days and you're desperate. But these rules, what they say that basically if you've done something wrong in the last 3 years, which you guys are living through right now, if these rules take effect, you could be barred from getting H-2B approvals for many years. So you need to be really careful because one of the things that they cite is one of the areas where we counsel our clients so hard not to do this, but then we get calls sometimes and they say, oops, or I know I shouldn't have been doing this, or don't tell anyone. I'm like, I can't tell anyone, I'm your lawyer, but they think that gives them cover. One of the things that they're pointing to is if you allow workers to work in a different job. So if you have a different job at your property, because the H-2Bs can't moonlight anywhere, hard stop. But also they can't work in a job different than what you applied for. So you can't have your housekeepers help with banquets, for example. And that act if these rules get implemented, which I think they will, it would make it so your H-2Bs petitions could be denied for years. So you gotta follow the rules if you do H-2Bs. Like that is, and you need to train your supervisors and managers because I always see this, right? Leadership and HR and recruiters, they might have the best of intentions, but it all happens when they let the workers loose on the property, and the supervisor is allowing them to do things that they shouldn't be.
Maybe this is an ignorant question, but how would the government know if one day you put a housekeeper in the banquet? Like, how would they know that?
So every time you file an H-2B petition, you're actually paying some money for an enforcement wing of Homeland Security. So that enforcement wing does basically two things. One is they audit. The paper audits, I feel like it depends on the administration, and I would love it one day to find out actually what triggers them. But it seems like if you file under supplemental cap, that definitely triggers some audits sometimes. That's definitely been clear. But also just sometimes you get a paper audit. It might be that the theme of the year is that they're going to audit summer season employers, and it's just random. The paper audits is one way. It's hard to find that out in a paper audit. The other way is if you ever have a wage and hour audit, which doesn't even involve H-2Bs, they're always going to bring H-2Bs in. And if you ever get a complaint, that also will trigger an in-person audit sometimes. And once they come on, they're going to interview staff, they're going to ask questions. Also, the paper audits would also show it if you're improperly coding, right? If you are trying to do right on most of it, but you actually let those housekeepers now code in banquet, they're going to see that in a paper audit too. So there's a lot of different ways they'll see it. In my experience, they see it, and they might not find you, but they're seeing it, and they're acknowledging that they're seeing it now.
So this is both for Keith and for Brian. Put on your seasonal connect hat because we know that there's all these problems with caps, and bring it really in season is the way to go. But when you're looking at in season, the H-2Bs are also in huge demand now. Everybody wants one, so it's not are you seeing things where employees have choices that can choose which property they go to? They're accepting multiple offers and then kind of picking the best one? Like, are you seeing that kind of competition?
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I know when you post your offering, your positions that you have available, and when I talked to the young lady who responded, to my request and why she picked Maine, she'd been in Ohio last year. Some of the things, number one, we had housing, and so you look down through and some of the duties and being in Maine, being on the coast, there were a lot of things that appealed to her, and there were so many choices. So it was very interesting to see that it was more competitive than I thought it was going to be. So, and I think Maine, I felt bodes better and well depending on how what kind of description you put in there. Being near Acadia National Park, we know how to advertise and market. That's what we do all day long. So I looked at it more that way, marketing to a customer rather than to an employee. So I felt that helped. And then what also helped, what I didn't realize, was last year having a couple of them. I have a little boat. We go up and down the Union River. I had taken some pictures with the other two Romanians I had last year, and that had been, and I'd sent them because they'd asked for some pictures as part of the package with CIE, and they had actually posted them on their website, so people had gotten to see a fall scene in Maine on the Union River, that kind of thing. So all of those things helped for recruiting.
So have housing, post pictures, and market yourself, and be an interesting place to go.
You know what's funny? We do events with Seasonal Connect, and we had one of our big clients, like big institutional type clients. They actually spoke about how they added a marketing branch under their recruiting division, and obviously that's a big example, but I think you're exactly right. It's marketing, but it's also telling the truth. And it's being honest, but it's putting in a good light, and it's selling the worker on your property. It's on all the things that I saw Carly talk about on the last panel. But the how you're going to treat them, how you treat them like family, how all the different benefits they have, understanding the cost of living, and where maybe Maine wages might not be the same as Long Island, but the cost of living here is going to be less, and that they might have actually more take-home pay. The other thing that we've done a lot on our side is we're really pushing employer-to-employer recruiting, and that's a game changer, right? Because now you can go to another employer and say, hey, I'm going to take care of these guys. I'm going to take care of your guys. They're going to be treated well. They're going to have a great season. Showing them all the marketing basically the same way. But once you have the employer buy-in and they're already at that employer, the more that they're doing that, the easier it is for them, and the easier it is to get a lot of people. So I think that's been a real big trick in terms of getting a step forward.
One of the other things that we do, spent 30 years as a culinary arts instructor at Hancock County Tech, and then I recruit heavily with teaching corps. Most of my wait staff are teachers or work in the school system, but so education's kind of a strong background for me, and kind of like every Saturday night I kind of have all the kids after we close up, and so we'll actually cook and prepare food from Romania and their country, and then so I'll have some of my younger kids and staff that are working, dishwashers, bus people, whatever, and then we kind of sit around and talk about their country so my people understand a little bit more, and so we'll bring in some so they feel a little bit from home, and have some of the when I listen to the previous speakers today talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, but broadening. We live in that world of exposing people to Maine culture when they come through my place every day, trying to figure out how to eat a lobster. we do the same thing, and with some of my people that have never been outside of Maine, what it might be like to, eat Romanian food and talk about their culture and that kind of stuff. So we've formed some great friendships from some of the young people with some of my young people. So it's not a bad thing.
And with the J1 program, you are required to do some kind of cultural activities, right? Do I have that right? What kind of things have you done with your...
Well, I give that assignment to my young people, so I'm that's way out of my league as an old guy, but no, I kind of pair them up with some of the kids, and they'll take them out, four-wheeling out into the middle of the woods in Lemoyne State Park, and then I had a young woman from Romania, and she paired right up with a couple other the hosts on the front desk, and they went and did their nails, and just immersed them in everyday life here, right? So what's it like to live and work in Maine and be a kid in Maine, and they just kind of went off with them on their days off and kind of hung out, and so I felt that was kind of the best thing. And of course we're right next to Acadia, so they went in and did some hiking and gone to see lighthouses and kind of do all the tourist kind of stuff. But they got a chance to kind of see that.
Keith, have you seen the H-2B workers? Are they kind of going back to the same summer, same winter property year after year, or are they kind of like moving around and trying new things? What have you noticed?
I would say a lot go back, although at a certain point they like seeing new areas. We get a lot of, I see this more in the winter, but I always see a point where workers say, I don't want to go back to Florida, what else you have? And so I would say I see that more than others, but it seems as though the job becomes more than just a paycheck for them, right? It becomes that experience, and they get really close. And so most of them, I think most people want consistency and they don't want to have to make changes all the time. So I think most want to go back. If they're feeling like they have better opportunities elsewhere, that's different. But H-2Bs are similar to your J1 experience. Once they see that you're treating them well and that there's an opportunity, they're going to tell their friends, and it's easier to recruit. That first year you do the program is the hardest, right? You don't have anyone to vouch for you, and you don't have that word of mouth element. But most definitely, I think, would prefer to go back, unless at a certain point I think Florida just wears people out.
I gotta ask, what about Florida is wearing people out?
I think it's just the same thing, and it's also, I don't know, it's all the stereotypes about South Florida. But I think part of it is that it's kind of very similar. I think the season is pretty tough and long. But there's other opportunities where they could go to, that same season, they could go to Arizona, they could go to a ski area, they could see snow possibly for the first time. I think there's this, and I think also with Florida, a lot of them don't know that they could go elsewhere because Florida has such a prominent winter season for the H-2B program that when they see there's other opportunities, they start to get more interested in that.
Do you have any examples, Keith, of like, does somebody come to mind that's like, this is like the dream person, like this is like my best, like there's people are knocking down the doors to work there, like is there like, and what do they do, and what is making them successful?
So ironically, they're in Florida. The one that immediately came to mind. What they're doing is they have a culture where they show constantly how much they're invested in the worker. During recruitment, they're so open. One of the things that's really, I would encourage any of you to do this if you do H-2Bs, they print out a whole folder that they bring to every interview or every job fair. On the folder, it will say per position, what are the busy weeks, what are the not busy weeks, when can they expect to have overtime available to them. They give out like all the swag that, and they make a really big showing of that. Once they get there, their employee areas are almost as nice as their guest areas. And they have quotes on the walls. They have space where the employees can relax. Carleon knows who exactly I'm talking about already. Everything they do has the employee focus in mind. And they do all this stuff that you're talking about. They do employee nights where they have different employees cook for them. In employee housing, they have the benefit of having the ability to do this, but employee housing, they'll have multiple refrigerators if they have multiple cultures together, because they know that the Jamaicans and the Romanians might have different dishes and might do that. So they're really paying attention to the worker experience, and every message from the time that they're starting recruitment all the way through the end of the season is really carrying through on that mission.
So that brings me to the question of housing. So you don't have to provide housing to. You do have to provide housing to do J1s. No.
I think it depends on the agency, though, right? I think some will require it, but most don't.
On the form that you fill out, it asks you about housing. Will you provide it, yes or no? If no, will you help, secure housing? So, and then if you're providing it, what's the cost or no cost? So there's the checklist is there. So, right up the street from me, this year was a place that was doing kind of workforce housing, and some of the other J1s from Ellsworth were staying up in there. The employer, I'm not sure if they were paying for or assisting them in doing that, but one of the things that secured me were the fact that I did have housing and was providing that at a fairly minimal rate compared to others.
Okay, interesting. I didn't know that. And of course, H-2Bs. Do you have to provide housing for
You
H-2Bs?
don't, but it's going to make it hard to recruit if you don't.
Yeah, that was gonna ask. That was gonna be like, what percentage of employers who have H-2Bs are providing housing? Would you like on a guess?
Well, I would say I think our client base is kind of representative of national. I think about maybe a quarter of our clients own their own staff housing. If that, most of them will find staff housing housing in the area. Most of our clients don't have. We work so much with lodging that if they don't want to take the inventory away from the hotel, or they're in areas like this where this would be a very hard area to find affordable housing, and so then it becomes also a transportation issue.
Right.
Yeah. Has Senator Collins, in Maine, is that a big issue, workforce housing?
Housing is
Yeah.
a big, housing and
Incredible.
transportation and workforce housing for sure, and is an area of emphasis for her, and she's been funding various, sponsoring congressionally directed spending for workforce housing in various places. So
Could you tell us a little bit more about that? Because I think that would be very interesting to a lot of people in this room for a lot of reasons.
I totally threw that. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, look, I don't know that it's a cure-all. I mean, I think it's a big problem, and I'm not sure that the federal government is going to be able to solve it. But, that's, part of the effort. I mean, housing generally, and I don't know how familiar you are with the congressionally directed spending process. It used to be called the earmark process. That got a bad name and went away for a while, has recently returned a couple of years ago, is somewhat in doubt because requires something akin to regular order. So for example, if the government is funded with some sort of continuing resolution or something like that, then these monies won't be available. The bottom line is, it's a bucket of money that's available for certain kinds of projects, and amongst those kinds of projects are some housing projects, and transportation. But it's it's a drop in the bucket. It's not going to be the answer, but it is indicative that she's aware of this aspect of the challenge as well.
Are these projects that are sort of like earmarked to happen in the future, or are these things that are being built right now?
Well, nothing works as quickly with the federal government,
Sure.
but we're in the midst of the fiscal year 24 budget cycle, albeit it's been stalled. That's my alarm, excuse me. Past year, and this is the first, so I've been working for the senator just over a year, so I've not really been through a complete cycle of this process, but last year's projects, congressionally directed spending projects, earmarked projects, those are just now getting the money that was allocated. So, and some of those are housing, but it's just one of many types of projects that are funded in this way, and it's a small part of federal spending.
And to your point on the federal side, one of the really interesting projects that I saw this year was one of our, granted it was the largest employer in the area, but they worked with the local town, with the municipality, and they said, hey, we want to build worker housing, would you be open to actually relocating essentially the center of town to this area and putting in some other employee housing? But it's also where I think we've seen more in the local side, like local investment, local maybe like chambers, and moving that forward with the towns and with the cities, getting some funding where they also work with multiple employers to pull them together and allow some opportunities.
Yeah, so an example of a project that is in the works in this cycle is up in Bath, working together with Bath Iron Works and the city of Bath on a couple of projects, a transportation project, a housing project, a child care project, all designed to try and address the needs of the workforce. But again, it's a small part of hopefully the solution. But yeah, so that project's funded, I think, 20 or 25 housing units, some child care, and then there's some transportation studies up there as working together with the state and otherwise to try and see if there aren't ways to improve upon the various modes that are being used to bring workers to and from BIW, for example. So I'm gonna have to run soon.
Oh,
I hate to
yeah,
say.
so let's, if there are any questions in the audience, I want to make sure we get those yes, okay, one there.
I have a couple.
got a mic
They're
for you right
quick though. I can talk loudly. Are you more likely to get an H-2B if you have been in the system prior, or is it completely even Stevens whether I'm a newbie this year or I've done it for 10 years?
In my opinion and experience, it doesn't matter. As long it's all about proving the need every year. It doesn't matter if you've done it before.
Okay, and on adjacent to that, are you more likely to get one if you've requested, for us, we probably have 65 employees. We're seasonal, but we're open all year. If we've requested 2 instead of 15, or
No.
does that also not matter?
Also doesn't matter, even if you want out-of-country workers, I truly don't think it matters. You should ask for what you want and also what you can show you.
Okay, and clarifying question on when you were talking about audits and doing things wrong, are they auditing just doing things wrong within your H-2B program that you have, or are they auditing your entire business for any wrongdoing, which is going to exclude you from then hosting an H-2B later?
So the in-person audits are done by the Wage and Hour Division of the Department of Labor. If they're auditing you on H-2Bs, they're going to audit you on the Wage and Hour. If they're auditing you on Wage and Hour, they're going to bring in H-2Bs. You do not want them. You do not want them coming.
So that's
Yeah.
basically a whole business audit.
Yeah, it's awful. It's not fun. Yeah.
Last quick question was, I was unclear if you have an H-2B and you're giving them the 35 hours minimum, but can they go work someplace else with your permission?
No, and it's interesting. We did a worker conference. We had workers talking. They all thought they could.
Yeah.
Everyone, I felt awful because the entire audience teamed up on them, and we tried to diffuse the situation. They can't work anywhere else. These foreign
they
nationals, that's the thing.
Well,
they want to, but this is now.
We're in that position
with
right
where
now
this is
that
heading.
where I'm asking because
Yeah.
we have one, and that was my understanding when I researched it 2 years ago, that we could if the other business gave their permission.
No, the visa is tied to your business, so they can't. And this needs to be part of your orientation. It needs to be part of your ongoing communication and education to them. They can only work for the organization that sponsored them for the H-2B. J-1s are different. There's more flexibility in working second jobs.
And one thought I might add with your perspective, Keith, I mean, I understand the senator supports reinstating the returning worker exemption to the H-2B visa cap. So I think that might be partly responsive to your question about.
That would make it easier for everybody to bring in workers from outside the country. I would love to ask you questions on this. I know you have to go, but from my standpoint, one of the things that's a struggle is in terms of bringing that back, it needs to go through some sort of regulatory process to bring that back, and it just feels to me. I'm saying this from my opinion. It's really hard to get any agreement right now on an immigration bill, especially. I looked at my phone while you were talking because I was curious. This new speaker seems like a very, I don't know how to say this politely, he falls under the President Trump side of the world.
Yes, I've heard that.
Yeah, I don't know how to say that right, but it seems like part of their mission, from what I'm hearing is like to kind of shut down government, not necessarily keep it open and running smoothly the way that I think. I'm going down a rabbit hole here. But my point is,
speaking for my senator, not the member from Louisiana.
Yeah.
My understanding is she supports that, and I wondered if that. I mean, look, there's no guarantee that will make it into law, but just by way of letting you know, I think she supports that, and I wonder if that wouldn't address
Created some confusion too with.
It wouldn't solve the second work standpoint. It would make the
not working a different job,
yeah.
but they wouldn't have to renew. There would be an exemption if you'd gotten one.
Yeah.
Then you
Extended.
You could, yeah.
Can I put you on the spot though for one question?
You can try.
Okay. Are there any other audience questions? Because there's some. I don't want to keep the people in the hallway too long. Yes.
Hi, I'm
before
Liza from
clock, so-
Saddleback. We've been employing H-2Bs. This will be our second season. And I've noticed once and we do the exchange with the other employers, once they get out and about, that word of mouth is real and your phones will not stop ringing. But with that, do we have a risk of any discrimination claims? Because the visa is tied to the job. So, for instance, our folks at Six Flags went back, told all their friends about us. They've all applied to all different jobs that aren't under that visa program. Or are calling and asking for jobs. Is there any risk of a discrimination claim when we already have our folks we want to share season to season? Do we need to be concerned about that? I've got some younger managers that get really freaked out when they see H-2B to hit decline on that job application because we don't have a petition for that.
So I'm not an employment lawyer, and that's an employment law question. But I used to work with employment law questions, and what they would say is partly you're always at risk of something, right? Anyone could sue. I've heard them say that many times. I think that it's the way that you structure your job applications, but you should definitely talk to a Maine employment lawyer. The thing is, the H-2B program almost makes you have to discriminate in some ways.
Exactly.
But I think the cover there and the truth of it is you're not discriminating. It's that you can't fill those jobs with Americans, and so you've had to bring in foreign nationals. Mm-hmm. But I think it's a lot of how you structure both the job posting and also the communication of why they're not getting the job.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we're going to have to cut it here, but definitely Keith and Brian will be around. Feel free to ask questions. Thank you so much, Halsey, for being here.
Thank you for
And so we're going to have a break. There's some lunches, there's some snacks in the back, so definitely grab those. And then we've got a fun networking activity hosted by Seasonal Connect after this. You'll finally learn what the colors on your name tags mean.